And good day. I am Tamara Scott. Thank you for joining us, tuning in, clicking on, however you do it. We're at Webcast One Live, and we thank Webcast One Studios for powering us today. We also appreciate American Family Radio, who will be broadcasting portions of the show on 6:30 p.m. Central Time Sunday evenings. And so you're welcome to tune in there, or let a friend know if there's a show that you like that you want them to hear. Remind them, send them a link that a radio station near them might be airing the program at 6:30 p.m. Central Time on Sundays. I have a couple of guests today that I think will have a fun show. Dr. Duke Pesta, Alice Linehan, who's been a guest on this show and dropped in for conversation from time to time. She's one of those who's been battling the Common Core movement and making great strides, gave me this name and said I needed to meet Dr. Duke Pesta. Well, as God can do, he's coming to Iowa. And so I have the opportunity to talk to him today. He'll be in Iowa Thursday night, tomorrow night. That's Thursday, the 18th. He'll be at Bethany Lutheran Church. That's at 2202 Forest Drive Southeast in Cedar Rapids. Bethany Lutheran Church, 2202 Forest Drive Southeast in Cedar Rapids. If you want information on that, Richard or Angela Phil is your contact. And their phone number is public, so I think it's okay that I give it. It's on all of the brochures. 319-393-4085. 319-393-4085. So that's at 7 p.m., Cedar Rapids, Thursday, September 18th. And it would be great for you to go and hear not only just about the Common Core and perhaps warnings he has for us there, but about his program and his website's Freedom Education Project. And I think just the general policy and information on having a good education system available to us once again and to our children. Also, the second half hour, Pastor Terry Amann will be joining us. Terry Amann is a pastor, a shepherd, a watchman, a guardian, an activist, all those things that pastors are really called to do. And so he'll be stopping in because today, as we tape this, it is Constitution Day. So he'll be stopping in. He's got some concerns as well. It's not just the gorgeous document that's given us the liberties and freedoms across this nation. I think now longer than any other governing document without a civil war or takeover or coup. But he wants to give us some warnings as to what we need to be cautious and careful about so that we can continue and preserve this document. So he'll be coming a little bit later in the show as well. We are always giving you information that you can use and things that you need to be aware of. And if I can get to them on my computer, a couple of different things this past week. I'm not sure if you're aware of it, and I'm not sure I quite yet believe it, but the Tea Party Network, and you can discount that if you wish, but they put it on their website, and they had the video clip of it. Senator Ted Cruz on the floor, when 49 Democratic senators voted to essentially gut the First Amendment. There was a SJ 19, Resolution 19, I think is what it was called, and they were essentially voting that the Congress, the Senate, would have the right for reasonable limits on your free speech. 49 Democratic senators voted to overhaul and essentially gut the First Amendment without the amendment process. I mean, if we decided to redo it, that's one thing. If we decided to have an amendment process take place across this nation, whether it's through the conventions or whether it's state by state, however we wanted to do that, there's a process in place. But to have someone override the Constitution, that's an alarming thing. And I think that's maybe one of the things Terry will talk about today. I'm going to take a break right now. When we come back, we'll be live with our guest, Dr. Duke Pesta. We'll be talking about the event here in Cedar Rapids, along with other information that he has available on his website. He is a University of Wisconsin professor of English, and we'll look forward to talking to him about the Common Core. We'll be right back after these messages. We thank Christians for America for partnering alongside with us, and we thanks Ryan in the production room as well. So we'll be right back. When we come back, we'll be going live with our American Family Radio folks as well. Thank you, and stay tuned.
Get away from us, you needle credit card. We don't have any more more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit, you're our hero!
Metro Fords are everywhere. Metro Fords are everywhere.
See 'em here, see 'em there. You got bad credit? We don't care.
Metro Fords are everywhere. Metro Fords are everywhere.
Visit emetroford.com for your guaranteed credit approval. Good credit, bad credit, no credit. Everybody drives with guaranteed credit approval at emetroford.com.
Metro Fords are everywhere.
Visit emetroford.com today.
Hey, psst. Let me let you in on a little secret. You ready? Always try to do business with people, not places. Especially if you seek honest Christian business people. And when it comes to my car, I really need to trust who's working on it. Now, my family is so blessed. A few years ago, we found a family-owned automobile repair shop that operates as a Christian business also. Open, honest, reliable, trustworthy. It's AMCO on Hickman Road in front of Kmart. And it's a family-owned Christian operating business. This family treats your car as if it was their car. Everything from oil changes to transmission repair and everything in between. So the next time you feel the need to be at peace with your choice of who you can trust with your car, give AMCO on Hickman a chance to serve you. And tell them Max sent you.
Restoring hope, open my heart to sing, taking the darkness inside, revealing your light, restoring hope.
And thanks for joining us. I am Tamara Scott. We thank Mac for sharing his air with us. And he, I think, usually comes from the Restoring Hope as the individual person recovering from addiction, changing lifestyle habits. And I usually come from Restoring Hope from the cultural or community aspect of making things better in our community and improving the world around us, telling the truth about the hard topics, tackling the tough issues of the day so we can have hope for a brighter day tomorrow. And so today, joining me is Dr. Duke Pesta. And Ryan, I'm just going to ask you, are you doing okay on the sound? Because I sound fairly blurred to myself. We'll ask Dr. Pesta if he's okay with it as well. But Dr. Pesta is the professor of English, University of Wisconsin, and his training sounds quite interesting in Renaissance, which sounds like a romantic period to me, but I'll be curious to see what that really was with him. And he also has a website called the Freedom Project. And you can do a search, Dr. Duke, Pesta. He'll be in Des Moines, Cedar Rapids, dealing with the Common Core, dealing with the issues that are facing us in education today. And so if you don't understand how this is impacting you, I'm going to ask you to sit in and listen just a little bit. Don't tune us out yet, because I don't think you quite understand everything that's happening in your child's classroom, the change in attitude that's going to impact your home, homes in the future, and our country. Dr. Pesta, thank you for joining me.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me today.
Appreciate what you're doing. Now tell us really seriously, when you study Renaissance, we think of, the fairs that we go to, Renaissance fairs and harps playing and jousting and, that era that we study or we think with Renaissance. But tell us, what was that about? What is it?
I'm actually a professor of Renaissance literature with a focus in Shakespeare, so I teach that, and I've also taught everything from the Bible to C.S. Lewis. So Renaissance in the sense of Shakespeare and the great writers of that age, and the great Christian writers of that age. So that's my area of focus at the university. And
so I appreciate even hearing there are great Christian writers of that age, because sometimes that's portrayed as somewhat of a dark era. So. Oh,
absolutely. The fact is that I tell my students at the university that in the 16th century they did not have feminism, Marxism, and all this other nonsense that's crept into our literature programs, but what they did have was the Bible, and the people there took it very seriously.
And so part of our concern with the Common Core, and you and I are going to discuss that, I am sure, but the concern I have is we're taking out the classics. Crystal Swazi says we'll lose 50% of our classics to deal with what they call instructional reading and documents, that type of nature. But for me, if I understand it, Shakespeare quotes a lot of biblical principles in it. In the classics, there are life-changing lessons that usually have virtue or biblical virtue in them. These documents that they will be replacing them with will not.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The entire last 2,000 years of Western culture has been primarily Judeo-Christian culture, and the great books, almost all of them, even if they don't necessarily agree with Christian values, they certainly have to grapple with them. So it's certainly not an accident that Common Core English removes up to 50% of all the great literature that our kids would have studied, literature that familiarizes them with our 2,000-year Judeo-Christian history, literature that puts them in touch with 300 years of what it means to be an American. That's being systematically pulled out in favor of informational texts, a good number of which come directly from the federal government. So kids are going to be reading President Obama's executive orders. They're going to be reading Environmental Protection Agency pamphlets in English class at the expense of the great world classic.
And so, all right, you're going to be speaking in Cedar Rapids. And tell us, what are some of the topics? For those who will listen to this show on Sunday, they will have obviously not been able to have attended your meeting. What are some of those things for people who haven't quite got the grasp of the dangers of Common Core? What do they need to hear?
Common Core is such a complicated question, and it's been dug so deep. Some of the main concerns include a dramatic federal takeover of education, ceding power from state and local schools to educate kids in conjunction with parents, and situating that at the federal level where it's going to become much harder for teachers. Teachers are handcuffed, much harder for moms and dads to impact what goes on in the classroom. Also, along with this federal takeover, you're getting a dramatic amount of ideological takeover as well. The reason this is being ceded to the federal government is because the federal government wants to use that power over education to ideologically change the minds of children, to convince them that they do not belong to their families, their parents, their religious traditions, but they belong primarily to the state. These are two of the major issues, although there's a whole host of others that come with something this big. And
so on your website, you even have one of the subtopics is who do our children belong to? Who owns our children?
Who owns our kids? That's a talk that goes way back beyond Common Core to show you over the last 100 years how American education got where it is. People don't realize the two founding fathers, so to speak, of American public education are Horace Mann and John Dewey. And Dewey himself was a card-carrying communist. And Horace Mann, too, had very socialistic tendencies. The entire premise of public education, when it was really created in this country, was designed to, from the very outset, allow the government to have much more control over what goes on with kids and families and how kids are educated.
Okay, so for parents who are just now catching on, and of course on this radio show, we've dealt with the Common Core for, over a year now. Actually, we started this show in 2013 in response to the Common Core, just because we knew we had to have an avenue to get information out there. So our listeners are pretty up to date on Common Core. But what would you be saying to parents out there? Because you're right, it's not just the Common Core. That's just one of many of the latest education reforms, like you say, who are coming after our kids. What would you say to parents out there that haven't paid much attention, or maybe they're in the battle of Common Core? What's the next step we need to be doing?
Well, I think at this point, we are still in the phase where the vast majority of American moms and dads really need to be educated on what it is. There's so much misdirection and confusion. The people who did this, put Common Core in your schools, they've had a 4-year head start getting it there. Most schools have already got Common Core textbooks. The tests are coming this year for Common Core nationwide. So they've done this quietly behind closed doors, and moms and dads are just beginning to wake up to this. So my point is the first thing we have to do is keep getting more and more moms and dads. If you're somebody who's been working on your show for the last year, listening to your show to become educated about Common Core, you need desperately to help recruit other people and let them know what it is. The only way we beat this is if we get a significant number of parents to protest it. And that's happening. It's happening slowly, but it's happening. The more moms and dads begin to see it, the more they dislike it. But we've got to move quick because this has got a 4-year head start on it. The tests kick in this year. And the time to do this, to remove it now, is now. And we've had, in the last 6 months, a number of states already begin the process of getting out. Oklahoma, South Carolina, Indiana, Louisiana's coming next. Missouri is poised on the precipice to do this. And in every state where there's been movement, it's been a direct result of moms and dads pressuring their state and local legislators.
And as you said, this is just one more of the latest reforms. So along with that, if I can just ask you some of the issues on education, what would you say to parents beyond the Common Core? What do we need to be doing as moms and dads? One of the comments I always hear from folks being in the homeschool movement is, I'd love to homeschool, but we'd never make it. We wouldn't get along. What would you say to parents who make that comment?
Well, step back to the first part of your question. I think the first thing that, beyond Common Core, the first thing we have to try to do is return control of what goes on with our children's education in the classroom. Every metric shows, and common sense dictates, that the best way to educate kids, the most effective way, is to have a committed mom and dad, a disciplined child, and a good teacher. That is the simplest, most effective way to educate kids. And Common Core is 180 degrees on the opposite of that. Common Core is total state-run, top-down, federal, handcuffed teachers, provides very little input for teachers and moms and dads. So returning classrooms to the base formation. We survived 200 years in this country without a federal Department of Education, and we educated our kids extremely well during that period. And so this whole standardization movement needs to be pushed back. And so as far as the homeschool question, I can only tell you this, that every single mom and dad who first considers homeschooling is nervous about it. They say things like that. The kids will be around too much. We won't get along. I don't feel qualified to do it. But for every one mom and dad who's regretted the decision to homeschool, I've encountered 20 who have thought it was wonderful and the best thing they ever did. Obviously, it's not for everybody. But given how much information, good information, is available online to help educate kids correctly and without the liberal biases of the public schools, it's not as complicated as you think. And it also, one answer is maybe it's going to make, we'll grate on each other's nerves, moms and kids, or dads and kids. But the other possibility is that having this time to work together toward a common project may indeed bring you closer. And from a biblical perspective, as we know, you are the first educators of your kids, not teachers, not schools, not teachers' unions, not the federal government. Biblically, we have a responsibility to educate our children first. And that if we get back to those principles, I think we're going to be okay.
I think you're absolutely right. And I always encourage people, if you're not marching to the beat of somebody else's drum, just having to run your kids to school every time some teacher, coach, or somebody else says they have to be there, you find a peace in your home when you set the pace. And you're absolutely right, Dr. Pesta. There is a new, renewed relationship, I think, and it to those who don't understand the role of a dad being a leader, it's not a lording over, but there is a peace. You know, whether you're on the football field or wherever you're at, you have to have a leader. Somebody's got to call the shots. That doesn't mean they're lording over or oppressive, but when you have that relationship, things start to fit in place. And man, we found that there was a new piece in our home we didn't even know we were missing. We were happy before.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You know, I don't care how much you pray with your kids. You could pray with them every night. You could take them to church twice a week. That's fantastic. But how do you overcome 8 hours a day, every day in the public school system, where not only are they getting a corrupt curriculum, not only are they being subjected to ridiculous standardized tests that prove nothing, not only are they being exposed to books and ideas that are anti-Christian, then you've got the bullying, and you've got the sexualization that goes on among the kids between the classrooms during gym class and lunch and after school. It's such a fraught environment that how do we, even if we are devoted parents who pray with our kids and take them to church and Sunday school, how in the world do we combat the effects of giving our kids over to the federal government 8 hours a day, every day? You're going to lose them. There's just no doubt about it.
And as frightening as it is intimidating. You know, will I be able to get them to where they can take a college education, which, by the way, I think that's the next education, is the next bubble to burst. And if I could stick the pin in it, I would. I think it's been, and I am saying this to the professor at university, but I think degrees have been overpriced and they're undervalued, and much of what they get in the college education is not what was intended by our founders, certainly, and by those who love the idea of education. And I think you can get an education far more ways than just sitting in a classroom, and not every degree should take 4 years. I just think there's a lot that has gone wrong with the education system, whether it's the dorms, what the lifestyle, just the behavior that is implied and impugned upon our kids in that setting. But I want to come back to this real quick. You brought up the school bullying. You mentioned bullying, and you mentioned having your kids in that classroom 8 hours a day. And I was saying it's intimidating. It is intimidating. But how much should we trust God to protect us with the very gifts that He gave us? If these are the most precious things, the only possessions from earth that we can have in heaven with us are our children, and we have to teach them how to get there on their own. You brought up the 8 hours of teaching. Here's what I say to people: if you see the restrooms in your Walmart store or your discount store or your Costco, whatever it is, right? And you get to that stage where you've got a child who wants to go in the restroom of their selection, and you're not able to go in with your mom, and maybe your boy's too old. And imagine if you knew there was a predator waiting, would you pray and simply send them in anyway? I say you would not. So why is it when we know, as you've exposed, Dr. Pesta, we know there are predators waiting in our classrooms? And now we're seeing not just physically, or not just emotionally, not just mentally, not just academically, but we are seeing more and more studies coming, more and more reports of even the physical predators, and that's not where I meant to go with that. But when your kids are under attack, why would we continue to send them?
I agree 100%, and there's no real valid reason for it other than we've become, and let's face it, part of the reason we're in the mess we're in educationally is because moms and dads for too long have just decided that the federal government's job was to take our kids, that we like the babysitting, we like the fact that 8 hours a day they're in a controlled environment, and so we have think about this. What's the average turnout in your state for school board elections? Was probably 10%, 15%. We've checked out of education, which has allowed the federal government to do what it's done. So we've got to get more involved. And I agree, too, by the way, 100% with what you said about the college education. I would argue that about 4 out of 10, 40% of my students every year don't belong in college. And some of them, maybe half of those, can't do the work, haven't been prepared well enough, and the other half just don't even want to be there. So I'm with you. It's totally oversold. It's a money machine. The federal government now is guaranteeing student loans, which means the schools or the universities are taking in far too many kids in order to have that money, and the quality of the overall education for kids in college is declining steeply.
And you can have an excellent, bright, skillful, talented individual that never went through the college education system. We've confused talent with being taught or trained.
Right, and I think that when you think about the federal government's push for mandatory pre-K and then the meaninglessness of college for a good number of our kids, basically all you've done is you've guaranteed that the federal government will get their hands on kids as young as 3 and up until their mid-20s. And if they do that one way or the other, from pre-K through college, even if it's unnecessary, we don't have any evidence that shows that the kind of Head Start programs that the federal government has pushed over the last 20 years have had any meaningful effect on student development. Spent all that money on it, we put all those kids in those schools, and nothing's come of it. So now the feds want the kids from about the time they're 3 to their under Obamacare, children are children until they're 27.
Right.
So you give the feds your kids for 24 years, I can guarantee you that they're going to reject any religious background they have. They're going to come to hate their country, and they're going to become increasingly dependent on the government.
And on the hate your country, that is being exposed with Larry Krieger and Jane Robbins talking about the APUSH, the Advanced Placement U.S. History Exam, that's been revised, and it is now left-leaning, and our hope, our emphasis on military triumphs have been diminished, and so that's other shows. You can check the archives on that. Our archives are available at Tamara Scott Live on YouTube, Tamara Scott Live YouTube, and Dr. Pesta, you mentioned the bullying program. We're hearing bullying programs don't work. Where we have bullying programs in schools, peer-on-peer victimization increases. And in Minnesota, I have been told that the Department of Justice is sending a monitor into the school district there because of the bullying program. And you mentioned bullying programs. There was a speaker at a trafficking conference just recently who said bullying programs, what they're doing is sexualizing the children.
No, you're absolutely right. Under the guise of bullying, remember Rahm Emanuel's famous pronouncement, never let a crisis go to waste. Under the excuse of bullying, we are radically promoting transsexualism, homosexualism as a way of quote-unquote defending kids from bullying, when what we're really doing is pushing a very particular sexual agenda. And my view of this is that the biggest bully in the country is the federal government. I would much rather have my kids. Well, I tell this to my audiences. I'd much rather have my kids' lunch money stolen from them every day than to have the full power of the federal government dictating what they will and won't do, will and won't say, what kind of sexuality lessons they're learning as young as kindergarten now. If we're going to really talk about bullies and get serious about them, we need to consider the role of the federal government in complete the Common Core as a complete attempt to bully 60 million American school kids. If that's going to work at the lower levels, we have to take the same tack with our government as well.
And the best bullying prevention happens at the local level, done by peers there in the school. So you mentioned the Department of Education. What does it look like if we remove the Department of Education? What does day 2 look like when you close those doors?
Well, everybody gets apocalyptic about it. Oh, my goodness. We're so used to having centralization that we can't imagine a world without it. I think what happens is that the money, that the big sewer that it's become of federal dollars, and how much of those federal dollars that we pump in, taxpayer money, we pump into the Department of Education, ends up in the hands of educational corporations like Pearson Publishing, right, whose job it is to make money off textbooks. In other words, that Pearson, who's basically administering and providing the tests for Common Core, they're getting millions of dollars from the government to do it. They're making millions of dollars off the states by selling them this stuff. And it's all getting subsidized. And so if you're Pearson Publishing, you don't want educational success. You want failure, because the more kids fail, the more you have to keep making them buy new stuff. The more you have to keep testing them, the more you have to keep making new textbooks. So it's a vicious cycle. And if you break up the monopoly at the federal level and allow that taxpayer money to stay in states to help particular local school districts where you live, there's going to be much more of a commitment and input from local moms and dads who are helping to mold that particular school, rather than dumping all their tax money into a big federal cesspool where it gets sucked up before it can do any real good for our kids.
My guest is Dr. Duke Pesta, P-E-S-T-A. He is in Cedar Rapids, Iowa at the Bethany Lutheran Church. Thursday evening, September 18th, 7 p.m., Dr. Duke Pesta. You can hear him there. For those of you who are hearing this on American Family Radio, I am so sorry that you can't get this in time to attend, or you may not be close enough to attend. But for those who listen online, feel free. We'll put this link on our YouTube shortly after we're done here today, and you can send the archive to a friend who needs to hear it. You will also post it on Truth for Our Time Facebook page and the Stop Common Core Iowa Facebook page as well. You're welcome to go to either of those. Duke Pesta with freedomproject.com. And we have just a couple 4 minutes left. I want to make sure that you have been able to say whatever's on your heart to get to the heart of our listeners. And if not, I have one more question for you.
So I'd just like to say to those who are able to hear this in time, please consider coming out. We give a very thorough presentation. You'll leave there educated and informed with a lot of information. And the website, actually, that they can reach us if they need to specifically is freedomproject.org, O-R-G, not .com. And that way you can get a lot of information on Common Core and our speaking schedule.
Thank you so much for correcting me. freedomproject.org. freedomproject.org. The question I was going to ask you, we talked about it just briefly coming into the show. Renaissance we always see as a dark phase, and yet we've seen this cyclical through time. We've seen dark ages, and we've seen enlightenment, and we've seen things get better, what I would call revival, awakening, reformation, restoration. So what is the hope for us in America as people are wringing their hands and thinking that things are looking somewhat dark here? And they are. Politically, spiritually, educationally, economically, there is uncertainty. What would you say to us now?
I would say that the only way that ultimately our job in this very fraught climate, you're exactly right, there's a lot of anxiety, and justifiably so, but the only recourse we have is to do the work that the Lord will have us do. We can only push the rock so far. Our job is to push to the degree that we can, and if we stay faithful and renew our commitment to God, then ultimately He has promised that as we push, sooner or later He's going to push too. And when He starts pushing after our efforts, the stone rolls downhill. So it is a battle. Ultimately, this is a battle for principalities and powers, isn't it? We can't win ourselves as individuals, but by staying close to our biblical principles, we can certainly increase our ability to be effective, and it's just a matter of time, as the Lord has promised us, that if we stay faithful, he will win the battle for us. So that's how it's going to have to happen, it seems to me.
And I think it will come out of our churches. It will come out of our homes. It will not come out of Washington, D.C., although the election process is vital in maintaining the liberties and the freedoms that we have. The Constitution, of course, we're taping this on Constitution Day. Constitution was put in place to what? What did the Declaration of Independence tell us? The precursor to the Constitution, to protect our rights endowed by our Creator. And so, again, we just have like another 60 seconds. I'll let you enter your comments on that, Dr. Pesta, because I know you have that on your website as well.
Well, the Constitution is in my mind, believe it or not, I believe it's the single greatest Christian document ever written, a secular Christian document. It emanates from biblical principles all the way down through the Mosaic Code and the Great Charter, all that stuff. So our document, our wise Constitution, is a result of Judeo-Christian premises. And I think that we must respect and return to it in the same way that we need to return to Scripture if we're going to fight this back and save our country.
And in a yes or no, if you can, Convention of the States, you agree or disagree?
Honestly, I think it may do more harm than good, but that's a whole other discussion. Before we have me back, we'll talk about it in detail.
Totally agree with you on that note. We are running out of time. You can hear the music. My thanks to Dr. Duke Pesta, Duke, P-E-S-T-A. You can go to freedomproject.org. You can also hear him right here in Iowa. My thanks to Christians for America for making this possible for us to come to you, and for Webcast One Live Studios. You've heard the word. Be encouraged and never be complacent. You can make a difference, and it is yours to make in your community. Thanks for staying tuned with us today.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershide.
I'm administrative manager.
I'm the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's gonna be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're gonna do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're gonna be listening. They're gonna wanna know what your challenges are. Then they're gonna come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
Enough said.
my heart to sing, taking the darkness inside, revealing your light, restoring hope.
And good day. I am Tamara Scott. Thank you for joining us on Restoring Hope and Tamara Scott Live. If you ever want an archive of our program, they are available on Tamara Scott Live on YouTube. We don't make it hard for you. If you ever want to contact us, you can do that through Facebook pages, actually, the Truth for Our Time Facebook page, or a Stop Common Core. We do a lot of work on the Stop Common Core, so you can usually find us there as well. My thanks to Mac for sharing his air with us. Mac talks about recovering and changing addictive lifestyles and restoring hope in an individual manner. We talk about restoring hope more often on ways in your community, restoring hope in politically, restoring hope in the education system, restoring hope in your families, tackling the tough topics each day so we can have a brighter hope for tomorrow. We help bring you help when the headlines hit home in learning God's Word in today's world. And so today, as we're taping this show, it is Constitution Day. It is September 17th, and a good friend and good fellow soldier in the bunker in the culture war has joined me today, and I'm so appreciative, and we'll be talking about our Constitution, and we'll be giving you some ideas on what you need to do. It's not enough we can sit back and wring our hands. There is help available. There is hope there if we will step forward and take it. So Terry Amann is with the Walnut Community Church. He's also an author. He was active in a prison ministry, and I thank him for joining me here today.
Hi, Tamara. It's good to be with you again.
And you're in studio. It's always a treat when I get to have a friend in studio.
Yeah, it's fun to be here, so thank you. Yeah.
Now, I know you were headed out today to go and talk to college kids about the Constitution, intimidating on a couple factors. Most people don't even want to talk about the Constitution. When we are at the fair booth and we say, you want to answer a survey? No. They just don't even trust that they even know the Constitution, which is supposed to be our guiding book and what gives us our liberties. I mean, if somebody said to you, here's a ticket for this door prize, and it's worth $5,000 or whatever, $5 million, I don't care. You're going to hang on to it. You're going to know what your rights are. You're going to know what the rules are. And yet this book is our very liberty, and most of us don't know it anymore.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing, really, when you think about it. I have in my hand right here, this is put out by the Cato Institute, and it's the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. It's not that thick. I mean, that's the beauty of the document. You know, our founding fathers wanted limited government, and it's even reflected in the materials they put out towards that end. And so I always have this booklet with me. It's on my person. And today is September 17th, and back in 1787, the Constitution of the United States was ratified by, there's actually 13 colonies, but 12 of them ratified the Constitution. The 13th, Rhode Island, sat that one out, and it wasn't a couple years later that they ratified it. But the document, if my math is right, would be 227 years old, and the longest surviving document of a government in history. And it's a beautiful document, and kind of just a brief history, Tamara, about it. In 1787, in January, the colonies were governed by what we know as the Articles of Confederation. Problem with the Articles of Confederation at that point was that you had different colonies issuing currency. There was no way to defend the land together because there was no unified militia, different groups, and so there was an idea. Look, we need to pull together and see if we can come up with something that unifies us together. So by May of 1787, 55 delegates arrive in Philadelphia, and they go to the place where the Declaration of Independence was signed, Independence Hall in Philadelphia. There's 55 delegates, and they're representing 12 of the colonies. Rhode Island, again, sits this one out. and they unanimously elect George Washington to be president over the process. So pretty interesting. They, you got to remember, the summer's coming on. There's no air conditioning.
Right.
They seal up the windows and close the windows and the doors. So the whole process is actually done in secret. And they have guards outside, making sure that secrets of what they're trying to come up with don't leak out. And it gets towards the end of June, and they're deadlocked. And considered probably one of the least what we would call religious founding fathers, Benjamin Franklin, comes along and says, he cites Psalm 127, verse 1, unless the Lord builds the house, those who labor do so in vain. And he said, we need a call to prayer to break this deadlock. And so the process goes on. And in August of 1787, we have the Constitution, the first draft, and there seems to be unanimity on moving forward with that. The architect of that being James Madison. And James Madison, considered the father of the Constitution, he actually brought what was called the Virginia Plan, and that became the structure for the Constitution. September 17th, 1787, and now there's only 39 delegates out of the 55 people. They have responsibilities, and they all couldn't be there, and so the Constitution is signed and becomes our founding document of the rule of law, and so today I think as we come on this anniversary, there's just so many ways where the Constitution is really under attack, and it's an interesting time.
It is an interesting time, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think David Barton, and I've got several books in front of me from David Barton, wallbuilders.com, I think, or org work, but wallbuilders.org. He's got great teaching on that website on our Christian heritage as a nation. I think he would tell us that, oh heavens, where was I going with that? That book, now I'm not sure where I don't think I've ever had that happen on air before. That this book, even though some would say Benjamin Franklin's not a Christian, or Madison, or whoever you want to pick, their writings surely were. They knew the scriptures maybe better than those who profess to be Christians today.
Yeah, they're grounded in the scriptures, and these men, these highly educated men at the Constitutional Convention. Most of them are in their 30s and 40s. James Madison is 26 at the time, but interestingly enough, Benjamin Franklin is 81 years old, and at a time when their lifespan was early 50s, was probably the high end of things. And so he really lived 2 lifetimes, and again, being often called one of the least, what we would say, religious, really knew his scriptures and applied them in different writings. And as we see so much of the founding fathers.
And I just brought up Wall Builders, and I, of course, have the imprimis in front of me, several of them from Hillsdale College. Always great information.
Yes.
Always good articles and not a long read. Where would you tell other folks to get information, like what you're talking about, what you're quoting? How did you find it? How can they find it? It doesn't have to be a stuffy old history book.
No, that's right. This little booklet I have is from the Cato Institute. There are other organizations that put these out, and you can carry that with you. I just think this is just a diamond, and it's the Founder's Bible, and this is the deluxe leather edition, so you can't really see the cover so much. But David Barton is the editor and the collator of this, and in amongst the scriptures, there are different articles which talk about the founding of our nation, the Judeo-Christian heritage. And, it used to be, when you think about, God forbid your house would ever catch on fire, like, what would I grab? As long as everybody's out of the house, is there one material thing I would take with me? There's always something else. Today, I would tell you, it would be the Founder's Bible.
Really?
This is just, it is tremendous. And you can obtain that at Wall Builders. You go through wallbuilders.com.
Boy, we're really pumping him up. I ought to hit him up for a sponsorship, right?
That's right. I was in Washington, D.C. last week, and we had a private tour at night in the Capitol,
Wonderful.
a small group, and with David Barton in the Capitol, and it was just tremendous, just to see him point out all the heritage of the Christian heritage of our nation, and so yeah, he's a tremendous resource. He has several books. And it's an exciting history, and it's a humbling history to see the hand of God, how God has been involved in the process, and how we're blessed when we're walking with God, and when we turn our backs on Him, then it's a different story.
Boy, we see it too. We
do.
can't talk about it without getting in trouble from the media, but we can see it. And so the point I was going to make about David Barton a couple minutes ago is he says this is the oldest living document. We're one of the youngest countries, but it's now the oldest living document where we've not had to have a coup, a civil war. We've not had a struggle for power. It's been the document. Now, some of us are feeling a little concerned because though it is our governing document, it is no longer looked to, observed, upheld.
Mm-hmm.
It's being, I would say, this president, with each stroke of the pen in an executive order, he is overriding the protections therein, and I would say with every stroke of the golf club, he's neglecting his duty to protect it.
Yeah, it's a time of good news, bad news. The good news, it's making people kind of look up and say, well, what is in the Constitution? What is so it's kind of a reformation in that sense, in terms of making us attune and not taking for granted what we've given. The bad news is we're being tested in this. We may not survive the test. And as you say, a good example, we have this ISIS threat today, and it's real. And so the president just gets on television and erroneously says that it's not Islam. Okay, that's number one. Number two, and say, well, we're going to go after these people. We're going to put up with this. Well, in actuality, where's a declaration of war? Why is Congress not involved in that? That's an unconstitutional act. And even if you go back to December 1941, we're attacked by the Japanese. And it's obvious we're going to war. But what does Franklin Roosevelt do? He goes before the Congress and asks for a declaration of war. He's just following the Constitution. And so we see that another area.
Not only has he not gone, but hasn't this administration made the statement they don't have to?
They don't have to.
They're well within their means.
It's a chilling statement, and we see that pattern. And it's very concerning. I think another area in the Constitution, it has the oath of office that the president takes. He's to defend the Constitution. And it says to the best of his ability. So maybe there's a problem with his ability. I don't know, but
I think we could, if we allowed callers, we'd have to stop right there. But let's go on.
Yeah. but you look at our southern border. We're a sovereign nation. If we don't protect that border, we lose our sovereignty. We cease to be a nation. And if we're going to talk about the ISIS threat, if the back door is wide open, then the rule of law, in my mind, goes out the front door.
Okay, so you're a pastor.
Yes.
You understand the compassion of Jesus Christ.
I do.
And so what is your response then when people say, you have to let these kids come across this border? You have to open your doors to people who are coming from struggling nations where there's danger.
The reason people come to the United States is because of the rule of law. That's why they come. And so when we shortchange ourselves on the rule of law, then we're providing an environment for chaos and anarchy. And once the rule of law breaks down, bloodshed it just follows, and that's history. And so we need to enforce the laws we have. We need to erect a fence. And if people come to that fence, we can minister to them there, and we can help them get back to their nations. I mean, we ought to be concerned about young people coming across dangerous areas and lands without their parents, subject to all kinds of nefarious activity. We ought to be compassionate about meet them at the border and minister to them there and help them get back to their countries. We do have a process here, a legal process. It's a beautiful thing when somebody comes through that process, as my great-grandparents did on both sides of my family. They go through the process, they become citizens of the United States and adhere to the rule of law.
And I would say, too, it's not just the rule of law, but it's the Christian foundations behind our rule of law that those laws uphold or parallel, as I think John Locke said, parallel. Laws must be parallel with nature's law, and ours were. And so, because we know countries who have the hand of law, the hammer of law, and there's bloodshed and guillotines, even some of the history. But for us, it was a Christian heritage, that light, that city on the hill. But you're right, Jesus Christ, we came to uphold the law, and that's how we must be protective in doing it. And I think as a Christian nation, I think it's wrong for us to have policies in place that are oppressive either to our own people, that cause people to lie, to cheat, to steal, to find help another way, like the health care bills may very well do, or to cause people outside our country to entice them to sin. When we've got policies in place, we're not upholding our own law, and we're causing people to abandon their children, to separate their families, to put people in the backs of cars or railroad cars or whatever in very dangerous physical situations. That's wrong on our part as a Christian nation.
It is, and right now we have, there's mystery illnesses that are floating across the United States affecting our young people. Is that because people are coming over the border, they haven't been vaccinated, et cetera, and we're putting our own citizens at risk? And so, as a pastor, as a caregiver, the caregiver has to take care of themselves, or they can't be an effective caregiver. It's just, one has to take care of oneself. And so we've been a light to the nations throughout our history. In order to do that, we need to stay strong. The other concern is they're being documented. They're finding sheriffs down in the Texas border are finding Korans along the border. And so the big issue here is, does ISIS just walk over the border and threaten our safety and security? And if we look at 9/11, we have not recovered economically from 9/11. That was in one area of New York City. It would be very easy for nuclear weapons, backpack nukes, suitcase nukes, dirty bombs to be brought over the border and set off in a city. And then if that happens, everything we're talking about doesn't matter anymore. You can, whatever topic it is you bring up, it doesn't matter anymore if we're hit from a terrorist act that way. And so we aren't going to be able to help anybody if that happens. And so that is a concern that I have. And as the political process in Iowa unfolds, I'm going to talk to candidates about that issue.
Michelle Malkin in The Imprimis, this is an older one, 2008, volume 37, number 7, you can look it up online, talks about 9/11 and the fact that she says 15 of 19 came from Saudi Arabia, where a special program allowed them to get fast-tracked visa programs. So many of those who participated in that day were here with lax immigration laws at the very least. Yes. Now we have virtually no immigration laws.
Yeah.
So every day we're putting our families at risk. And here's my thing is, if you're an elected official, you take an oath of office to uphold the law and to protect the people under the Constitution. The Constitution is those of us in the United States that are citizens. It's not everyone around the world. And if you're not upholding that border and protecting those citizens, you're breaking your oath. You agree or disagree?
I agree. And I think another significant area where the Constitution has just been shredded is with the IRS scandal. And for instance, for Lois Lerner to go before congressional committees and take the Fifth Amendment time and time again, she's hiding behind the very document that they were shredding in their office. That is when we unleash the IRS on citizens, that is a very troubling development. Another area is Obamacare. Now these are significant issues, but they go to the heart of the Constitution, and he continues to make changes in the Obamacare health care plan.
He just rewrites the law.
He writes the law. That is not his area. It's clearly defined in the Constitution that's the legislative branch. They're to make laws.
And you're talking about the Constitution. One of the beauties of it was that 3 branches of government, checks and balances.
Checks and balances. Congressional, executive, judiciary. There's an order there. And we see the judiciary, Supreme Court speaks, and it's like everything stops. And as David Barton pointed out when I was in the Capitol building last week, he said, the Supreme Court used to be in a closet down in the basement of the of the Capitol building. That's how much influence they thought that they
should have.
The court should have. Yeah.
Yeah, and everybody talks about judicial review. That's right. It was a policy, but so is judicial restraint.
Yes.
Knowing what is yours and knowing what is not yours. Yeah. And I'm not sure if I can even remember if it's 78 or 58, the Federalist Papers, but Hamilton said if it's going to affect the body politic, in other words, the greater number of people that are impacted by a decision, then it doesn't belong in the court. The court is for an injury. When someone's been wronged and we fix that wrong, we find a remedy. But when it's going to impact a culture, a community, it goes in the legislative branch.
That's right. And the Supreme Court, they issue opinions. And we don't, thank you very much for your opinion. We agree or disagree. And, if you go back to Roe versus Wade, that was a court opinion. And when we have ruling by 9 people in black robes, we have oligarchy. And we've lost what the founding fathers and the brave citizens fought for, that you and I would have this as a gift, not only for ourselves, but to pass on to our children and our children's children.
You brought up the Roe v. Wade, and we always hear the 14th Amendment as an excuse for someone to do whatever they wish and have equal rights for lifestyles that are, frankly, somewhat dangerous, according to the CDC. But if we read the 14th Amendment, there is a sentence in there: no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of the citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of the law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction equal protection of the laws. Tell that to every pro-choice, pro-abortion activist.
Now, why can't the Supreme Court see that? I'm all about states' rights. I love the 14th Amendment. I'm all about it. But I believe we have to have some basic core principles that bind us together as a nation. Otherwise, we're right back under the Articles of Confederation. We've got 50 states, which will be 50 countries, which will eventually fight over land or something else. That'll be war. And so we have to have things that bind us together. And the key there is life. Without life, nothing else matters.
Right.
Without life. And
you've got a couple minutes left, so I want you to make the points that you want to get out to our listeners, and then I'll ask you a question if we have time.
Okay. Very briefly, I would say as our Constitution is being tested, we can grow from that, but I believe we're not going to have revival in the nation until we eliminate abortion. And I think there's a connection to slavery and the blood that was shed at that time. The same thing today. Until we end that, we're not going to have revival in this country. So we need to work towards that, but we need to become familiar with what's in the Constitution and hold our elected officials to what they take an oath to. And
this book is your passport to freedom.
Yes.
It is your passport to liberty, and you do need to make sure that you have it, that you know it. We are running out of time. I wanted to ask you about the Convention of the States, because I can't think we can do it any better today than our founding fathers, who at least feared the Lord or knew the Scriptures did in their day. And as we said, it's the longest document thus far. Terry Amann has been my guest today, Amann. You can find him at Walnut Creek Community Church on their website. Thank you for being a pastor that cares enough about your community to get involved, to take a stand, and to speak to the people on the issues. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Tamara. Thanks for having me today.
My thanks for Christians for America for helping us along, providing us some sponsorship. If you'd like to partner along, you can find us on Truth for Our Time Facebook page. You can find our archives on Tamara Scott Live on YouTube. Be encouraged and never be complacent. You can make a difference, and it's yours to make.